All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have brought Jake back onto the channel today to talk a little bit about Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings, being that you are a Vikings fan. Moving on to Dalvin Cook for a second. So, Dalvin Cook asked to be released from the Minnesota Vikings this past week, got released, and is now a free agent. He's going to go sign with anybody. So, from the Vikings standpoint, are you upset that you guys are going to be moving on without Dalvin Cook? Do you think that he was going to continue to be a big contributor to that offense, or are you, confident in Alexander Madison as the backup, or as now the
Yeah,
starter?
so at the start of the offseason, Alexander Madison signed a $7 million deal. And so kind of since then, everyone's kind of known that he isn't or that Dalvin isn't going to stay. And after everyone accepted that, it was kind of made sense. He made over $10 million on the cap this year. That just doesn't really line up with what we want to do. And it kind of goes to show the league in general is shifting away from getting those expensive running backs and just going to the committees. If you look at the last few Super Bowls that have been won, actually for the last 20 plus years, it's all been on cheap running back deals. So the whole league is kind of shifting to that. It is sad, seeing Dalvin go because he's been in the organization and been so good for so long. But it's definitely the time, and I got confidence in the guys. I got confidence in Madison. Two rookies, second year Ty Chandler, and then rookie Dwayne McBride are both looking pretty good right now. So the future's bright, but it does hurt to see Dalvin go.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you said about the contracts and the monetary value of running backs. We've seen, and this has been a trend for at least the past 5-10 years. Running backs getting more money on their second contract never really ends well. I think one of the best examples of that has to be in recent memory, just the Todd Gurley deal or the Ezekiel Elliott deal. I mean, just the production just really fell off a cliff. And, Dalvin Cook, he's 28, right? And normally running backs are not productive up until their age 30 season. So I think a lot of people are worried that Dalvin Cook is about to just absolutely fall off a cliff, both in production and with efficiency. And speaking of that efficiency, you look at some of his efficiency stats, which aren't everything, I will say, but his efficiency has kind of dipped from
Yeah,
what it had been in previous years.
there was a stat. It's called rush average yards above expected, and I don't know if you have seen that, but among
Yep.
qualified rushers, he is actually last in the league for last year. So
Yep.
people were
Yep.
blocking for him, and he was just coming up short. So as
Yeah.
unfortunate as it is, like I said, it's definitely time, and it's also better to get rid of someone a year too early rather than a year too late.
Yes.
In this
Yes.
case,
Absolutely.
we didn't necessarily get value for him, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But I definitely think they made the right move.
I was gonna say, do you think that the Vikings could have gotten some value for Dalvin Cook? Like, I mean, I understand some teams might not have wanted to take on the contract and get a new one in free agency, but I mean, a seventh, a sixth, you couldn't have got nothing. You don't think?
Yeah, so there were actually reports of having a trade lined up with, I think it was the Dolphins, is what was reported, like in March or something. So I think what happened is Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the GM, played it a little too cute. He tried to hold on to get a little extra value. So he'd wait till after the draft. Um, but there's also speculation that I don't know if you guys are following, but Dalvin Cook had a surgery right when the new season started, and that guaranteed $2 million of his contract. And so there's speculation that he wouldn't have passed the physical back then. So
Hmm.
there's things to nitpick, things to debate. In the end of the day, you can argue what option would have been better, but he would have ended up gone regardless. So
Yeah, and I think even if you guys would have gotten something, what's the significance of like a sixth or seventh round pick? Really, not every sixth round pick is Brady, unfortunately. So,
exactly.
I think
And at that
the
point,
whole
it's
NFL.
weighing the is the 6th round pick worth the extra cap that you would save? So $3-4 million, and it just isn't.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I think that the Vikings trading Dalvin Cook, or the Vikings not trading Dalvin Cook and cutting him, leads the door open, obviously, for him to sign wherever he wants. And I think the entire NFL world is pretty much guaranteeing him to go to Miami. So is there any other team that you think makes sense for Dalvin Cook, or do you think it's just kind of the Dolphins all the way? He's posting. I know he's. Listen, I'm used to finding these Easter eggs. Right, I watch Marvel movies. He posted all those pictures of him at Hard Rock Stadium.
Yep.
He's kind of hinting heavily at the Dolphins. So, other than Miami, is there a lot of other teams that make sense to sign Dalvin Cook here?
There's definitely a few. I would say Miami is far and away the betting favorite. It's where he's from. He wants to go back home. It's nice weather. It's a lot better than
Yeah.
Minnesota. I'll tell you that.
Isn't there no?
um,
There's no state tax in Florida, right?
no income tax, I
There's no state
believe.
tax. That's nice.
Yeah. So there's all pluses there. Another option I heard thrown around is, of course, going to the Bills, reuniting with his brother Dalvin. Actually, funny thing, his Dalvin Cook's name is Dalvin James Cook, and James Cook is James Dalvin Cook. So something
That's
that you might not
that's
know. It's
pretty
pretty
cool.
funny.
That's
Their
pretty
parents
cool.
messing with them a little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
But the Bills would be good. I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense. And I know he said he wouldn't necessarily want to go take reps from his brother. So we'll see what happens there. I could see him going to Dallas, being a running mate to Tony Pollard, kind of like Zeke was before. I heard that name tossed around. I heard Atlanta before the draft, but I don't think that's going to happen because they got Bijan.
No, yeah,
Um,
no way. No.
yeah, so I think if any teams, Miami's definitely the best option, but then those other two are also, you know, sneaky contenders as well.
And with the Dolphins too, we talked about his brother being in Buffalo. He's going to get to play his brother at least twice a year. You know what I mean? So he's going to be
Exactly.
clashing with his brother. So yeah, I think Miami makes the most sense from so many different angles. Um, Now there's people saying whether or not that he makes a huge difference. Miami's added a lot of big names in this offseason, but people are debating whether or not he's going to make a huge impact actually on the field and not just on paper. Um, so I personally think that Dalvin Cook, he's gonna not be a workhorse running back in Miami. I think he's gonna share reps with
Agreed.
Devin Akane and with Raheem Mostert. And I think Mike McDaniel is going to use him creatively because Dalvin Cook does have a specific skill set that he does. I mean, he is a very versatile running back. He's a good receiving back. I know, obviously, I'll let you talk in a second about what he's done during his time in Minnesota, but I think Mike McDaniel is going to keep him off the field a lot, and he's going to be able to use him creatively when he's actually on the field. So, what do you think his usage is going to look like if he does end up going to Miami?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, exactly. I don't think he's going to be the workhorse. I think he's going to be a committee guy. And honestly, I think it's going to be very beneficial for him. Um, he struggled a little bit kind of in the numbers and before the breakaway part of the run a lot last year. He only had 2 runs also more than 50 yards last year, and he has over 10 in his career. So it's a big step back there. And I think being on an offense like that, where he's not the focal point of the run game, he can come in, he can catch passes out the backfield, he can do screens, he can get outside the numbers, get him into space, and get doing what he does really well. I think is going to benefit him a lot, especially because everyone there is so fast.
Oh
He'll
yeah.
just be able to fit right in, and I think it'll complement his abilities really nicely.
Yeah, and not that this wasn't the case in Minnesota to a certain degree, but I think in Miami especially, with the threat of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the outside, those DBs, I mean, they're playing off. You're not going to see a lot of press coverage against the Miami Dolphins. You're going to see a lot of deep zone coverage. You're going to see a lot of guys preventing that deep shot. And I think that could, not just for Dalvin Cook, obviously, but that could open up a lot of running lanes in the intermediate part of the field for Dalvin Cook to hopefully get to the second level. And then, like you said, if he's able to get into that open field, he's going to do Dalvin Cook activities. You know what I mean? He's going to be great.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so I think Dalvin Cook to the Dolphins is probably the most likely. If you had to talk just really quick contract, you think what, like a 1 year deal, 1 year, 5 mil, something?
Definitely 1 or 2 years. We're seeing
Yeah.
people kind of stray away from the longer contracts with the running back. Look at Zeke Elliott. Look at Alvin Kamara. Even
Yeah.
look at Joe Mixon. Nobody wants to pick those contracts up, and Saquon probably isn't going to get a contract either. He's just playing on the franchise tag. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing, yeah, 1 or 2 years. I'm maybe up to 7 million. I know he was making about 10 in Minnesota,
Hmm.
and I
He's definitely getting a
don't
pay
think
cut.
he
Yeah.
don't think he wants a pay cut. So I'm thinking he'll probably aim for 7 or so, maybe like a 2 year 10 million where he makes 7 the first year and then has some incentives or something
Yeah.
around that area. I don't think it's going to be too crazy, but I also don't think it's going to be a total discount because he deserves it. He's a good player, but just not a $10 million a year player.
Yeah. No, I get that. And then just wrapping up, talking about the Vikings specifically, they've lost some guys in the offseason, obviously, this year. So how do you think the Vikings offense is going to look this year relative to what they were last year? Because they were one of the league's better offenses last year. You guys have made some subtractions. also made some additions, with Jordan Addison and everything like that. So what do you think the offense is going to look like relative to last year?
Yeah, so this is actually unpopular opinion, kind of a hot take to a lot of people. I think the Vikings got better on both offense and defense, but I think they're going to have a worse record. And,
Okay.
last year, everyone can kind of agree it was a little fluky. It's kind of hard to win, what was that, 11 games by one score. So I think they're going to regress a little bit record wise. But as for the offense, they got the running game shored up. They hopefully will have a healthy offensive line. They have two superstar tackles. They brought in John Oliver, blocking tight end, so we'll be able to run a lot more. I think the running back by committee also is going to help, pick the guy
Yeah.
you want in the situation. Justin Jefferson's going to get a lot less attention with Jordan Addison there.
Yeah.
Him and KJ are going to be great, like kind of wide receiver 2-3s that share the second load. Of course, behind Hawk, he needs a contract extension also, who's going to be
Yeah.
awesome for the next few years. And then defensive wise, we definitely lost a lot of people, but we're going to get faster and younger, which honestly is the most important thing. Because if you don't give guys opportunities, you don't get faster. You're just a bunch of old guys out there. Well, we saw what happened last year. They let up 400 yards a game. So
Yeah.
I also
That's
think
true.
I think Brian Flores is definitely going to help with that as well. He's super aggressive. It might not be this first year, but within 2 years, I think they're going to be a top 10 offense. Kind of like what he did with Miami when he went there. But I'm really
Yeah.
excited. They're preparing for the future a lot, which is refreshing to see. Clearing up a lot of cap, giving guys short contracts, and actually focusing on how to win long term instead of trying to win every year. So, I'm really excited for this Vikings team for this year and for the years to come.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, this will probably make you cringe, but I remember last offseason, I really wanted Ed Donatel to be the guy who comes into Seattle's defense and be the defense coordinator. And now I'm just like thanking God that I did not get my wish granted because he was just awful last year for the Vikings. And not to say
Yeah.
that you guys were a top 10 defense on paper, without him, but I mean he was just putrid. So I think that's a huge upgrade going from Ed Donatel to Brian Flores. Your defense is going to be, I think, a lot better.
100%.
All right, final Vikings record prediction while I have you here. Last thing we'll say.
Trying not to be a little too homer. I'll say 9-8.
No.
Leaning into the bias a little bit, maybe like 10 or 11 wins.
Okay.
But they'd have to get a little lucky again too. I think they
Yeah.
will make the playoffs. I don't think the NFC North is that great. I think the Packers are going to be even worse than last year. Lions are the Lions until they prove everyone else wrong.
I agree with that.
And then
I
I think
agree
the
with that.
Bears, the Bears were the worst team in football last year, so I don't see them making the playoffs. But we'll see. I'm not, cautiously optimistic, which is about all you can do as a Vikings fan.
Yeah. There you go. Well, Jake, I appreciate you coming on to talk about Dalvin Cook and the Vikings. I was obviously always love you having on the show. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out. Appreciate it, Jake.